Also, be careful when Rhode Island decides to host it. Be careful that if you're subject to the code and your vote decides whether Sodexo gets their contract renewed, that you don't go to Sodexo and say, hey, would you spend $10,000 to cater an event at our annual meeting? Oh, right. So that's soliciting your subordinate. So you want to make sure that you're never soliciting your vendors who are relying on your vote to have their contract renewed for freebies. And if you have questions about that, contact us. Question?
Yeah, so if I just need a little bit of clarity on this. So when I was a school district administrator, I was invited to take part, it might have been a testing company, a textbook company, whatever, invited me on trips to California, to Florida, wherever. These great hotels in Los Angeles, and I called the Ethics Commission.
And we said no.
You said no, because it felt wrong to me. And what I ended up doing was, even for things like dinners, if I was invited to a dinner, I'd say, is this more than a $25 dinner? Or I would say, I'm not going to go as a decision maker, but I'm going to go down the line of my direct reports, find an interested party, a literacy expert, whomever, who might not be a decision maker. This person can go to the dinner to learn more about your product, but I often did not go. So if now on the school committee, if our superintendent is invited to something in Los Angeles that's put on by a testing company, what do we do? Should I have gone on that trip?
No, we get this kind of question a lot. If it's from a vendor, if it's from an interested person, they want to fly you out somewhere to take a look at the new product, and they want to put you up in the hotel while you're out there and that type of thing, we almost always say no. And because normally it doesn't fall within that exception that I just talked about. It's not something that's being offered to everybody all at the same time, and these types of trips. What we say is you are allowed to accept gifts of information that help you perform your duties. So if they invite you and want to waive the tuition at a 4-day seminar on best practices in special education, they could do that. But you still have to get yourself out there, pay your own way, and that type of issue. Let me finish up the recusal process, then we can talk a little bit more about gifts if you like, and there are a couple other sections of the code I want to talk about too. Checking the time, we're doing pretty good. So here you have, the last thing I want to say about identifying a conflict of interest under business associate, just so you're clear, I had mentioned that your business associates are people or organizations that you have a ongoing contractual relationship with, much like your ex-spouse. When that business relationship's over, it's over too. So the business association ends, you're now allowed to participate. But the other kind of business associate that many of you have is one that may not seem like immediately jump out at you as being a conflict of interest. So you're people who serve on boards, you're people involved in education. I'll bet you get asked a lot to serve on a board of directors of a nice nonprofit in the town, right? 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 So if you serve in a leadership position on another organization, a private organization, even if it's a nonprofit, even if they don't pay you, which of course they don't pay you, you are a business associate of that organization. So if you are the vice president of the local Little League, then you are a business associate of your local Little League. And when the Little League comes to the schools and says, can we use your baseball diamonds on this weekend for a tournament for free? That's a decision that you're helping to make that's likely to financially impact your business associate. Even though it doesn't impact you, you don't get anything out of it, but you serve on the board of this nonprofit and they get something out of it, and that's a conflict that you would be required to recuse from. I think this is one of the conflicts that slips under the radar the most. When you're involved with an organization, you're serving as a volunteer, you're just volunteering your time. And what we often tell people at the Ethics Commission is, in that kind of situation, sometimes you have to ask yourself, how can you help this worthy nonprofit more? By being a public official who's able to vote to grant them money and grant them access, or by serving on their board of directors and helping to guide them, but recusing on everything that involves them on the board, because you can't do both. So you have to decide which one is most important to you or to the organization. Probably in most cases, you're better off being on the school committee and not on their board of directors, but that's for you to decide. So now let's say that you've identified your conflict of interest, or you've decided to recuse out of an appearance of impropriety. You don't want to participate. How do you recuse properly? How do you manage the conflict? Remember, at this point, you've done nothing wrong. You've just realized that you have a conflict of interest. If you're not sure, there are some options available to you. The first thing you should do is talk about it. Talk about it with your fellow board members. Talk about it with your superintendent or your legal counsel. Hey, do I have a conflict? Let me tell you something. This is what's going on. Should I be participating in this? The more people you talk to, the better the decision making is going to be on this. You want to be open about it. You don't want to keep it to yourself. If you still don't know, you can call the Ethics Commission. We'll be happy any time during our normal business hours, which are 8:30 to 4:30. If you call the Ethics Commission and just say, hey, I'm on a school committee and I've got a couple questions, can I talk to someone? We will transfer you to someone immediately. Has anyone here ever done that? Did anyone here have a bad experience doing that? I mean, tell the truth if you did. Okay, or maybe you wouldn't tell the truth anyway, but I wouldn't ask it if I thought that someone was going to say, oh, I tried, but I just got put on hold and then they never called me back. We want you to call. We'd rather spend 10 minutes on the phone with you than 6 months with you in a complaint. So give us a call. We're happy to talk to you. And if you still need formal guidance, then we can talk about getting an advisory opinion where you write a letter to the Ethics Commission. You don't fax it to us. You don't email it to us. You either hand deliver it or send it in the mail. And we will give you a formal written opinion as to whether or not you can vote on the contract or go to the educational seminar in Memphis. Has anyone here ever gotten an advisory opinion from the Ethics Commission? See 1, 2, 3, 4, a few people. Anyone want to stand up and complain about how horrible the process was? You can. I think it's a good process. I'm in charge of it, so that's why I say that. I think we do a pretty good job. Our turnaround is about a month. 30 days or less is what we shoot for to get you your opinion, and that's not bad for government work, a formal legal opinion. I think it's pretty good. So you've decided you're going to recuse, and you know it in advance of the meeting. What do you do? Here I'm going to talk mostly about best practices. You're not going to find what I'm about to say in the Code of Ethics or in the Open Meetings Act. This is just in my experience and in speaking with legal counsel to different boards and commissions, this is what we've come up with as being probably the best way to handle these things. So you think you've got a conflict, the first thing you should do is let someone know, probably your chair, because they want to make sure they're still, if you're recusing, it means that they're going to be down one person, and maybe someone else is in Florida, and maybe there's a vacant seat on your board. So someone's got to make sure that there's going to be a quorum present. So you might want to tip off your presiding officer or your legal counsel or your clerk or someone, whoever it is in whichever town is responsible for these things, to let them know in advance it's going to happen. When you get to the meeting, you might want to remind that person again. By the way, when we get to item 6, remember I'm recusing because my sister-in-law is involved in that matter. Then when that item is called on the agenda, that's the time to recuse. Are you allowed to participate in the discussion and then once the vote comes, just recuse on the vote? No. No. When you recuse on everything, including the discussion leading up to the vote. That's a crucial part of the matter, is the talking. Or if you're asking questions of a witness or participating in the process. So when you recuse from an agenda item, it's from soup to nuts. Every part of it you're not participating in. Then once the matter starts, I get this question, do I get up from from the table? Do I leave the room? What do I have to do? How many people here leave the room when they recuse? Okay, a few hands. How many people get up from the chair and sit in the audience when they recuse? Okay, about the same. How many people stay in the chair but just don't participate? A few people. Okay, so the good news is all of those things are allowed. Okay, so nobody's in trouble. But we do think that there is a best practice. And the best practice we think is, so let's assume we're in open session. Open session. So the public's allowed in the room. When you recuse, you should think of yourself as no longer being on the school committee for that particular agenda item. You're just a member of the public. So it makes it real simple this way. So now think to yourself, okay, now I'm just a member of the public. Can a member of the public sit in my chair? No, we wouldn't allow that. So don't you sit in your chair. Where does the public sit? In the audience. Okay, go sit in the audience. Or if you want to leave the room, leave the room. It's possible that some school committees might have bylaws that specify what you have to do. So you might want to check that out. Some of your bylaws might say you have to leave the room or you have to go sit in the back of the room or in the audience. We think it's just a good idea to get up from the table. The practical reason is if you say one word, you violated the code of ethics, right? If you forget that you've recused and you're sitting at the table and you say, well, that's not true, you can't take that back. It's done. And these days, all your meetings are videotaped, right? In the old days, when I first started at the Ethics Commission, our investigations, we had to go interview every single member of the board to find out what was said. Now, as soon as the complaint comes in, we just go on the town's website, pull up the video. Yep, there it is. It's right there. That's not a reason for you to stop videotaping your meetings, by the way. So we think that you should get up. What if it's an executive session? Yeah, we think you should leave the room. Believe it or not, there is no rule or law that you're going to find that says you must leave the room. Maybe your bylaws say it, but the code doesn't say it, and the Open Meetings Act doesn't say it. But again, if you consider yourself just a member of the public, when you recuse and the public's not allowed in the room, what business do you have in the room? None.